Tonight, part 3 of a special 4-part documentary series called State of Emergency. News 21, a national reporting initiative based at the Cronkite School, brings top journalism students from across the country together to report and produce in-depth pieces. Tonight, the focus is on the new normal. Wildfires are becoming an ever more present threat and forcing communities in the West to learn to live with them. But is it possible for people and fire to coexist?
Not everybody gets a lot of mail. Some people get more than others. Some people order a lot more Amazon than other people do. There's a lot more for sale signs these days. There's 3 or 4 here on the corner. There's 10 in Starlight Pines, maybe 11 now, including the new one. A lot of the ones that you see have come up just since last November, when the Paradise Fire did.
When they first came out with that a few months ago and said Shingletown's the next paradise, people in town were like, oh my God, it's not like we didn't know it, but to have it stated that that's what it is.
Well, we moved up here in 2011 to semi-retire up here because it's so beautiful. And life's been good up here. So we were on vacation and we got a call from our daughter. She was at work in Chico and someone told her Magalia's on fire.
She tried to get back up here and get her cats. And she got turned around and then she got caught in the gridlock going down.
So then she called us. I tried to get the cats and I couldn't. I'm stuck in traffic and there's fire all around me, Mom, all around. So I told her, take a deep breath and get off the phone and pay attention to what you're doing. And I said, but call us when you get back to work. She finally called and said that it took her, 3 hours, 4 hours or something to get back to work.
So this is our daughter's lot where her home used to be. Unfortunately, like all these other properties, her home burned to the ground and she lost everything. One of the saddest things we've had to do is actually sift through the rubble of her home looking for any kind of little valuable jewelry, and especially her cats, her 2 cats that were burned in the fire. I know it's been really, really tough for her. She couldn't stay up here. She couldn't bring herself to drive back and forth to work and see everything every day. We didn't lose her then, but I still feel like we've lost her.
This is incredible damage. I mean, it's just the neighborhood is gone.
We're getting water from the river and from the sky.
The wildfire war is not a war that we will win.
If ever the cavalry was needed, it is now, and it is in New Orleans.
It always happens to everybody else. Sometimes we're that everybody else.
You do what you got to do to survive, and so that's what we did.
I just thought that we were going to die.
I lost 100% of everything.
We have to start somewhere. We have to rebuild.
We can't keep losing people like this.
We got to help each other.
We will find ourselves facing another disaster, and it's only a matter of time about when that will be.
You don't know where it's going to hit, and you don't know when.
You can't beat Mother Nature.
What is fire? What makes things burn? In this film, we're going to study fire, what it is and what it does. We know some things about fire already. Fire gives us heat. It cooks our food and sometimes provides us with light. Fire does a great many things that are useful to man, but fire can also be dangerous.
What is a fire? There are actually lots of ways to describe it,
because fire is not a substance, it's a reaction. So it takes its character from its context. So a candle is one kind of fire, a blowtorch is another kind of fire, a fire burning through grass. They're all fire, but they're all different. And the question is, fires are here, we're here, how do we get along? And there is going to be some kind of negotiation. We're not in control of all this, but we have a lot to say about how fire behaves. We can do a lot about ignition, what the ecosystems are like, what those landscapes are like. Are communities going to be threatened? And how are those communities going to be organized? Are they going to be dispersed in ways that make it practically impossible to control a fire? Is there a buffer zone around? I mean, all these things are within our control. And those are the questions we should be asking. These communities need to accept the fact that if they are in naturally fire-prone areas, they have got to accommodate fire.
We're a mountain town, which means the roads, they're narrow. Driving into my home, part of it was paved, part of it's not. It's surrounded by what you see behind me as far as trees. When you look at it from the air, you see a lot of brown and dead and dying trees. It's like living in a tinderbox. When I first got new customers on my mail route that were from Paradise, I thought to myself, why would they move here? I think part of it is they like the environment. This is what they're used to, the sound of the wind in the trees, the wildlife that comes through, and I think that's what they want in life, mountain living.
Hold the gym down for you nicely, I see. Anybody familiar with this? Some of you might have seen that movie already. It concentrates on the campfire and Paradise, of course, because that was such a disaster. It isn't meant to scare anybody. It's meant to tell a bit of the story. So let's see what happens, shall we?
Paradise, nestled in the woods, high in the Sierra. A close-knit community, 26,000. Many of them retirees, drawn to the charm and beauty of life in a small mountain town, where residents have just received immediate orders to evacuate.
When you see the videos of people driving out with trees on fire and buildings on fire, their cars caught fire, and we know now that not everybody made it out that way. And I don't want that to happen to anybody here. It's just, when I was sitting there, it was hard to breathe, and I had a hard time not crying. I hate crying in public, but I often do. And it's just scary. It's really terrifying to think all it's going to take is a lightning strike, and that could be Shingletown. We could be the next national news story on a tragedy. And I don't want that to happen.
This fire starts, and within minutes, it's hundreds of acres. The man in charge of the state's wildfire fighting force, CAL FIRE, is Ken Pimba. He's never seen anything like it.
The CAL FIRE, which is the big sort of state-operated agency, has for the last 10 years done a really robust job on educating people about what it means to live in the wildfire zones and what they can do to fix their homes so that at least they might buffet fire, at least temporarily, long enough for you to get out of there.
The question is defensible space useful for homes that are situated, surrounded by trees? And the answer is yes. If you protect your home, if you protect it with a 5-foot clear zone, nothing burnable within 5 foot of your home, and 30 feet away you've got something that's pretty clean and green, and for 100 feet beyond that, you limb up your trees, you stand a good chance of saving your home. A forest fire, when it sweeps through, in ordinary conditions and even in extraordinary conditions, is only on your property for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then it sweeps on past. Embers are present for 30 to 40 minutes to more ahead of the fire front before it reaches your property. Embers cause more homes to be lost than direct flame or radiant heat. So you want to keep those things clear. That's what defensible space is about.
maybe we can't control nature in a hurricane or tornado alley, and didn't think about the vulnerability of moving up into a fire zone where 5 to 6 million Californians have moved over the last 2 decades. The biggest cost is going to be borne by firefighters who race uphill when we drive downhill. And there's a way in which we haven't thought about the ethics of that situation, the social responsibility that we owe to the firefighters themselves. Yes, they're trained to go into very tense, very dangerous situations. Why should we make them more dense and more dangerous? That's why defensible space to me is actually a very ethical act, because it means you're thinking not about yourself and your house only. You're trying to give the firefighters a fighting chance to do their work with some safety.
We looked at this several years ago, and midstream we abandoned plans to create a county-wide ordinance that would require every parcel be cleared. The question is would we get support for a county-wide ordinance? We're going to find out. Because of the fire in Shasta County, it's coming back to us. I believe we'll probably consider it.
At the town hall meeting, Les Baugh was talking about mandatory defensible space. Well, that's wonderful. And he asked for a vote, and a lot of people said, hell yeah, blah, blah, blah. I did not raise my hand because I know that I personally couldn't do it. The people on my route who are disabled, elderly, financially insecure, cannot do it. So you're going to come along and you're going to say, you have to do it, or we're going to do it, and we're going to put it on your bill. Okay, go ahead and do it. Good luck getting your money. So if they had a program to prevent that part, here's the money, we're going to do this for you, that seems like a far more compassionate and logical thing to do.
Well, last year, the first day of our session, I proposed AB 38, which was the beginning of what we felt like would be a comprehensive bill around preparedness for the future for protection from wildfires. We wanted to create the ability to do hardening of homes, and we wanted to have a financing mechanism for that, particularly around what we call the low-hanging fruit, those things that would be fairly easy to do, but have a high potential impact for helping protect homes.
Around the house that'll catch debris, catch leaves and pine needles, and get windrows of them built up for an ember to land.
I went to Paradise after the campfire, and the homes that survived, it's fascinating, and we're seeing this in other areas as well. Removing that vegetation there saved a lot of homes.
The fire came all the way down on the side of the house and all the way down through the creek area. We were probably fortunate that we had some defensible space. We can't really come up with any other explanation of why they would have survived with the fire going on all around it and burning all the other homes around.
You still see the houses down. My sister brought her 2 grandbabies here and the little one. Nana, why are all these houses dead? Because she's been up here before and she saw that. Well, then we were explaining to her about the fire, and it was really bad. It's just going to be a long road to travel, as they say.
The legislative process is not perfect. As you move through committees, things change your bill. When we got to appropriations, the funding mechanism for our ability to do the loan fund was removed. We're always going to have fire. It's always going to be a part of the landscape in California, but we have to keep the memory of what happened alive so that we can help motivate people to prevent those in the future, and then we've got to tie it to funding, and that's the hardest part.
The dilemma is that fire safe as a concept is absolutely smart, and you should do it, but it's also a way by which people fool themselves, that if doing this, you will be okay. When in Southern California you get the Santa Ana winds, or these huge winds that come flying through the canyons and like a bellows really pumps energy into a fire, those fires can be moving at 60 to 70 miles an hour. They can have flame lengths of 200 to 300 feet, and they can toss embers 2 miles and 3 miles in advance. You can have the most fire-safe community on the planet. When a fire is coming through at 1,000 degrees or more, I don't care what you've done to your house. And if we didn't live there, it would just be a forest fire or a chaparral fire. But we do live there, and so now it becomes a natural disaster. But it's a natural disaster of our own making.
Thank you guys for coming, and I just want to thank everyone for being part of this great community. One of the greatest things about living here is that no matter what goes on,
Everyone is looking after each other. What we cherish most about this area is the open space, but more importantly, the ability to get out when we have a fire, right? We've all had to, if you've been here for more than 5 years, you've had to evacuate. And everyone knows how frightening that experience is. Coco's fire, 30 houses were lost in this community, right down the road.
We had stayed up all night watching the fire from our front porch with our neighbors, just to make sure that something didn't happen and we needed to evacuate. So we were all packed up just in case. Finally we just got, oh God, we can go to sleep now. And so it was about 10:30 and my son lived nearby and he didn't go to sleep, he kept watch. And a half an hour later, he woke us up and he said, we have to get out of here right and now. The wind had changed direction and was coming down the ravines of the mountainside. And so two supercharged fires were just rushing down the hill into our little valley. And the fire engines from Elfin Forest Fire Department couldn't get through. And then the other road, Country Club Drive, also, we didn't know it, but already a house had burnt there at that far end. So there was just this one exit for us to go. It was pretty jammed. And that is so frightening, that you're trying to get away and evacuate, but you're in a traffic jam in the middle of a firestorm.
As you guys know, we are in litigation right now with the County of San Diego over these 2 development projects that are putting us at risk. The promise that was made to us when we supported Harmony Grove Village was that we're going to maintain the rest of this community as a rural environment, a rural nature, open space, preservation, and all that good stuff. And so unfortunately, the county has not held their side of the bargain, and they've opened up other areas in our community up to development. As a community, we worked with the county when the general plan came up. Our biggest concern along with other unincorporated communities, is the fire risk, the evacuation. We want to make sure that whatever happens from a land use perspective, it does not make the evacuation situation untenable, because then nobody wins and we're all in trouble. We as a community agreed to a very large project in Harmony Grove. It's been being built for like 10 years now, 750 homes, that's 1,500 more cars, than there were back, only 5 years ago when Coco's fire happened. And so not a year or two later, another developer comes in and says, we want to build here too. And so we're like, well, obviously that's not going to happen because, that's the arrangement we have. It's embodied in our general plan now, the county's general plan. That's when we're like, okay, so turn to the county. Are you going to back us up on this or what? The Board of Supervisors voted and upzoned it, without community input.
We're terribly concerned. They're creating a death trap for us. And then they say it's because we need the building, but the problem is it isn't low-cost housing. So it's all about profit. And there's not a real concern with the housing crisis or fire safety. That's not good. The safety of the people.
If you talk to firefighters privately, they will tell you that building in eastern San Diego County, like building in foothills in Southern California or up in the Sierra, is not a good idea. But they're public servants. But when a county supervisor turns to you and says, what do you think? And you know that the county supervisor wants you to greenlight it, and you know your job is to protect people, you're not going to say, and by the way, we really can't protect people. Because then what happens in the legislature when you go for a larger budget?
We got a fire consultant in Orange County, and he came and looked at the situation, and he said, this is a catastrophe waiting to happen. He said, and he wrote this in the report, he said, catastrophic losses are not only likely, but probable.
Yeah, we lost a house right here, but we were able to hold the line right here and save the structure to my right.
Okay. So this is where the house was. It's taken me about 4 years to feel like myself again, because my mind was just pulverized. But I never cried. It was just too big to cry about. If this project gets built, people are going to move. My neighbor says I'm not going to subject my children to the possibility of dying in a fire. I mean, we're pretty serious. This is not defensible. It's not having a way out. If you put, all the population that they're talking about, expanding that project across the street, there's no way you could be safe here. I'll probably leave too. Yeah.
How should we define our relationship with fire? I think we call it a relationship. Fire is what made us what we are. I mean, it's embedded in our genome. I mean, we got small guts and big heads because we learned to cook food. And then we went to the top of the food chain because we learned to cook landscapes. And now we've become a geologic force because we've begun to cook the planet. And our environmental power is in many ways fundamentally a firepower. And we've allowed that relationship to deteriorate. And we need to start putting it back together. Realize that we each depend on the other, and we've got to do this in a way that allows us to make the planet habitable. That's our task. That's what we do uniquely. Other animals knock over trees and dig holes in the ground. We do fire.
The loss is the beauty of all the people that were here, the beauty of all the homes. And this is the neatest place. My daughter thinks I'm crazy now because I'm not a real outgoing person, but since I moved up here, I say hi to everybody. I really do love it here, and I know there are days it's kind of hard to go out of the yard, but I try to look past that to see what's going to be, once it's clean and everything. I don't want to leave because, like I said, it is beautiful here, and where am I going to go? I don't know.
Shingletown as a community is very interested in wildfire protection right now. I'm afraid that interest will wane later. Anytime you're trying to reduce wildfire fuels, it's not a one-off event. It goes on full time. If we can keep programs going, if we can get community support, if we can get a little bit of money, if we can keep volunteer interest, if we can interest younger people in volunteering and helping the community, I think it's going to go well.
Volcano's going to happen. Earthquake in San Francisco's going to happen. California might break off and fall into the ocean. Being human means there's risk of some sort in your life. I don't live in a bubble. Shingletown is not a bubble. But if you're looking for a quiet mountain town with a good community and a good school and great people, this is a place to be. It truly is a place to be. And there's lots of towns like ours all across California, Montana, Oregon, all that. I don't know why people wouldn't want to live here.
its children had come to the Mother Church of Country Music. It was almost like a badge of honor that you had to bring your culture with you to the table. That's why Bob Wills and his guys brought us Western music. That's why Hank Williams brought the South with him from honky tonks. Johnny Cash brought the black lamb dirt of Arkansas. Bill Monroe brought music out of Kentucky bluegrass music. Willie Nelson brought his poetry from Texas. Patsy Cline brought her heartache from Virginia. I mean, it was the most wonderful parade of sons and daughters of America that brought their hearts and their souls and their experiences, and it gave us a great era in country music.
At the Grand Ole Opry every Saturday